Hello, everyone. I wanted to come to you today and share some thoughts. I have, within the last year, really embraced the idea that there are no coincidences. I've been playing with them pretty heavily for, the last 3 years, but I think the last year is when I've really, truly committed to that as a belief and can feel it. And I recently joined Alignable, something that's only here in the US, I believe in Canada as well. It's a social networking group for businesses. And I've been doing quick connects, getting to know people, building relationships. And then one person in particular said, "Hey, I'd like to invite you to our group event." And really interesting because it was during a time when I take my son to gymnastics. And it's far enough away that it would just be too much of a pain in the butt to drop him off, leave, and come back and pick him up. So I stay there. And often I can't really even see what he's doing. So it's pretty boring. So I've had to figure out things to do. And then, look at that. Instead of being bored out of my mind, here's an offer to join a group of people who were chatting, right? Highly spiritual. I didn't really know what I was getting into. So I hopped in. I freaking loved it. Really enjoy their ideas, the way that they share them, the way that they play with ideas. And the second week there was a gentleman by the name of Anthony who was playing with the idea of when the Pharisees confronted Jesus. And they're like, "Yo, bro," right? My words, not his, right? His was very much enlightened. But, so this is what's going on in my head as I'm listening to him. "Yo, bro, yo, dog, what's the best commandment there is?" Right? And then they're all kikiing, right, laughing like, "Yo, this guy tells us what's the best commandment. We're gonna kill this fool." Um, and Jesus is just like, "Yo, y'all better get out of my face. I mean, your breath smells like a wet dog's butthole. Like, ugh." And outside of the comedic element there, Jesus, did he say, like we say here in Utah, "Well, I know, brothers and sisters, I know in my heart that the Book of Mormon is the one true word of God," or "I know in my heart that Joseph Smith is the one true prophet of God, and I share this as my testimony"? No, he didn't pull from the letter of the law. That's what these guys were doing. Right. So the Tao Te Ching says, when humans are born, they are soft and supple. When plants are born, they are soft and pliable. When humans die, they are stiff and rigid. When plants die, they are stiff and brittle. Therefore, those who are rigid and brittle are disciples of death. And who's more brittle than somebody who's more rigid than somebody that says, "Hey, if you don't follow this very narrowly defined letter of the law, you're going to be put to death." Disciples of death. So what did he do? He stepped out, right, from that paradigm, right? The Tao again goes on to say, "Give evil nothing to resist, and it'll go away on its own. Not because it's not there, but because you can step out of its way." And what did Jesus do? He stepped out of the way, and he pulled from the spirit of the law. He said, "Honor thy God above all else." Not honor his God, not honor her God, honor thy God. And then love your neighbor as yourself. And as he was talking about it, my mind was racing and putting things together. I have read the book Busting Loose from the Money Game by Robert Scheinfeld, and phenomenal. Very Matrix-like, very much like, hey, this is, all illusion, which makes sense. An atom is 99.999999% empty space. 99.9 to the sixth power empty space. So when you drill down into an atom and look to see what's there, there's nothing there. And so all this is illusion, which is what the mystics throughout time have basically been telling us, that this is all an illusion, Maya, right? And so Robert Scheinfeld talks about anytime that there's something that makes you feel uncomfortable, right? Maybe some dudes are like, "Yo, bro," up in your face, and their breath smells pretty nasty, and they want to murder you because you strayed away from a very narrowly defined, precept of the letter of the law. And when you feel discomfort, you lean in and you remind yourself, "Oh, this is just an illusion. It is my true self. It's the limitlessness." right? My soul is what is created in the image of God, not this, not my body, but my soul. My soul is the ocean in a drop, which is again the idea that, right, created in the image of God. And what happens, and anyone who's worked in sales, has been trained, I can pretty much guarantee that whatever's going on in your noggin, if you have some chaos going on in your noggin, maybe you don't trust yourself, maybe you're very unsure of your ability, well, you know what, whoever your prospect is going to come up with that objection, whatever's going on in your head. You're going to give it to them, and they're going to use that as an objection. So Robert Scheinfeld talks about this as your ultimate self passing down a script for those who come into your sphere to act out. So then that way you can learn, one, the lessons that you need to learn, and two, maybe even just how far you've come and or how much further you need to go. And so I thought about that. Honor thy God above all else. Well, okay, limitless self is, the God self. Honor thy, right, and love thy neighbor as thyself. Well, if I see that my neighbor is coming in and sharing something with me that I find disagreeable, well, that was my higher self passing down a script saying, hey, this is an area of opportunity that you need to learn from. Okay, well, that makes a whole lot of sense. And we, as creatures of projection, right, very Jungian psychology, we're likely going to project from a place of scarcity, a place of fear, a place of lack of love. And we're going to alienate that from ourselves, and we're going to project it onto other people, which is then our self coming to us to teach us how to integrate that which we're alienating. And if we can love from a place of, love that which is a place of scarcity within our own hearts, well, now we're embracing and integrating, and we're now loving our neighbor who is here to tell us the script that we handed down from our highest self as ourselves. And I found it so amazingly fascinating. And how Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the light. Well, the Bible's not the book of the way. The Tao Te Ching is the book of the way, which is why you see Jesus literally embodying the Tao, stepping out of the way of evil as it shows up. Now, you could say, well, what about when he actually died? Well, that must have been for a higher purpose. He must have served his purpose, cashed in his chips, said, hey, this is ultimately, what I'm here for. But outside of that, I see nothing but beauty and him allowing, right? Him allowing people to be where they are. Right. The Tao talks about how the highest part is curved down and the lowest part is curved up. So that which has excess will feed into that which doesn't have enough. And where did Jesus find himself? With people who didn't have enough. So he was giving of his abundance, his overflow to those who needed it most, those who had the hardest time loving, probably those who were the thickest numbskulls, who, we would laugh at. These guys must be part of the Dunning-Kruger, right? These are on the Dunning-Kruger paradigm or continuum. Well, aren't we all? I mean, I think that we saw back in 2020 with COVID and demanding lockdowns and like, oh, the vaccine might be causing things unforeseen because we may not have tested for the things and then just came out and said, well, it's safe and effective, even though we didn't prove that. And so now we have ourselves in a place where our paradigm is questioned and realize, oh, well, the smartest people in the world are actually some of the easiest to hypnotize. All you have to do is have somebody in authority come up and say, yo, believe this. And immediately they start believing it. And how easy it is for us to dismiss those who we see as, lower, less than, who have no education. Maybe they've got a few teeth missing. Maybe they talk very burly, right? That's who Jesus hung out with. Those who would call sinners, who we call lower class. And I can't help but see what wonderful majesty there is in that idea, and how many different mentors I've had, whether they be through books, whether they be through actual, programs like the Elite Mentorship Forum I went through with Peter Sage, or, Healing Genius with Ed Stracher, and just how the same fundamental story plays out. And if you convince yourself that this is your true self, you're going to find yourself in a world of hurt because you're going to have the illusions stacking up on illusions. And it's going to be hard to actually make your way through and find your dreams realized. If you can remind yourself that your God self is your true self, and those that come into our arena, our circle of influence, have been handed down a script from our higher self to teach us what we need to know. And maybe that's just like, hey, good on you. Good on you. And I would encourage you to look at what Jesus says and less about what the Bible says. But Josh, okay, how can you do that? Right? Well, because Jesus never once, right? When they said, hey, yo, bro, what's the best commandment, dog? He didn't say, oh, right here, bro, right here. And here's the 17 different, paragraphs that are describing, in detail why this is. No, he didn't pull from a letter of the law. He didn't pull from something rigid or strict or brittle. Why? Because he's not a disciple of death. A disciple of death doesn't mean that you're a bad person. But the more that you try to hold control and guide everything in exactly the manner that you need it to, well, it saps your life force. And so it's you that you're killing because you're draining your life force. Don't be a disciple of death to yourself. Be a beacon of light to the world. And how do you do that? Well, honor thy God above all else, thy God self. Right? Go inside, meditate, find stillness, and connect with your heart, which speaks from the soul. And connect with that higher part of you. And with that, hey, you're going to start to see that path is going to start to unfold. It might unfold pretty rapidly. It certainly has for me. But as it unfolds, just trust yourself. And remind yourself, hey, this is all an illusion. Somebody pisses you off, oh, just an illusion, lean in. Right? This is where there's discomfort. Hey, this ain't real. Not only is this not real, but this was the exact lesson I needed to learn. Because if somebody triggers me, well, they're now my master. They can trigger me with that same thing over and over and over unless I learn that lesson, that I'm the master of my domain. And how do I become the master of my domain? Well, again, remembering that my true self is not this. So I wanted to come to you and play around with some ideas, throw in some humor there, right? I hope you laughed. And, really help you digest a very salient point and how I think that all of our lives can be made far better, far more abundant, and really help shine that light and that love to others. And thank you so much for your time. And I wish you all a wonderful day. And may love and truth always guide your path.